Okay, we'll start the class. So, in the first unit, we discussed about general concepts of biodiversity, types of biodiversity, and we were discussing about different types of prokaryotic and eukaryotic biodiversities in third and fourth units. And in the last unit, we'll be discussing about different concepts, microbial interactions, unculturable bacteria, and different types of techniques utilized for biodiversity characterization, such kind of things we'll be doing. So, in fact, you people must be following the books, biodiversity book. See, I'm trying to explain you through the biodiversity book. Okay, and so it will be useful for you for the subsequent reading also. Okay, now we'll discuss about microbial interactions. What is microbial interaction? What do you mean by microbial interactions? Interactions are like, see, you people, friends will be interacting with one another, and teachers will be interacting with one students. Really? In fact, microorganisms also do communicate with one another. Microorganisms, that is called as quorum sensing. The communication in between the microorganisms. See, they don't speak; they communicate in terms of chemicals, lactones. If suppose there is a huge amount of sugar available at one side, so that bacteria, that particular bacteria which is there in that area, will release the lactones, and that lactones will be distributed uh, in the media or in the soil, and it gives a communication to remaining bacteria. And similarly, you must have seen the ants. uh, the ants, if they locate some food, they will they will go to the colonies, and meanwhile while they are going to the colonies, they will release some sensors kind of thing, chemicals. And if some other ant comes across this senses material, chemical, it will follow it and it will reach that area. Otherwise, this whatever the ant that is going to its colony, it will go there and it will bring its colleagues to that area. So this is how, see, there is a positive relation in between the living organisms. See, um, there's a mother, whatever the animal mother, that interacts with its child very positively. Even sometimes she does not feed for herself, but she tries to feed her baby. A very positive relation is there here. So similarly, and see, the these relations or interactions are always may not be the positive, sometimes negative, or sometimes maybe neutral. See, we are traveling in a bus. Both are healthy. So one is not other person, whether it is not a negative or not a positive. That is called as neutral relation. And sometimes, if a person is suffering with COVID, he is releasing the virus, and that virus enters into the other person. The other gets you effect, that is a loss that he will be getting, whereas the person with COVID, he does not get anything. So different types of relations are there. That is that comes by the interactions. So we'll discuss in detail microbial interactions today. Microbial relations. See, among the microbial population and among the microbe and plant, microbe and animal, and microbe with other microbe. These different relations we'll discuss. See, microbial interactions are very important for the survival of microorganisms itself and the survival of even humankind also. That microbial interactions are very essential. Microbial interactions are very essential for the survival of microorganisms themselves, as well as the microorganisms and the cleaning of environment and biodegradation of various compounds and bioleaching. For all these things, we require microbial interactions. At the simultaneously, we are getting different types of diseases also because of the microbial interactions. So with this brief introduction, just I will start the session. Microbial interactions are basically two types: the interaction within the single microbial population, and interaction among the different types of microbial populations. And so these two, what do you mean by population? What do you mean by population? Can anybody define? Deepak? Deepak?
Number of organisms belongs to same species.
Is it? If it is a microbial population, we can say that the microorganisms which are surviving in a specified area is called as microbial population. But in general, the population is the number of organisms remaining in a particular area in a given time is called as population. Suppose Hyderabad population. If Hyderabad human population it is mentioned, only the human beings. And if it is a human, and generally if you call a forest population, it is not, if you are not mentioning deer population or peacock population, it is the sum total of organisms present in that area in a given time is called as population. I didn't ask you the microbial population. It is population is the sum total number of organisms represents the area in a given, that is called as population. Whereas microbial population is some number of microorganisms in a given area. See, we are cultivating the bacteria in a flask. So in a particular flask, uh, the number of microorganisms, E. coli or whatever the bacillus that you are growing, that is the population, microbe E. coli population of that flask, or bacillus population of that flask. That is called as single microbial population. Whereas diverse microbial populations, if you go to the field, if you collect 1 gram of soil sample, in that one, if you are taking the garden soil sample, a fertile soil sample, or rhizosphere soil sample, it contains huge number of bacteria. Bacteria number is going to be around 10 to the power of 8 to 10 to the power of 12, and actinum numbers is going to be 10 to the power of 4 to 10 to the power of 6, and fungi number is it will be in the range of 10 to the power of 2 to 10 to the power of 4. So huge number of microorganisms are there, and this is the number, and even different species are there. Bacilli, see, bacteria, I'm telling 10 to the power of 12 to 14. That is not represented by single bacteria. Different types of bacteria are there in that soil. Some gram positives are there, some gram negatives are there, and even in the gram positives, even different types of gram positives, sporulating bacteria are there, and Bacillus subtilis is there. So many different types of, even within the Bacillus species, many. You will get hundreds of species. Bacteria are there in a given soil sample. So here, the population is diverse microorganisms. In this case, we need to understand the microbial interactions when the population is single, and we need to understand the microbial interactions when the diverse microbial population is there. Okay, and then the third category, microbes with the plants and microbes with other organisms, like not microbes with plants, microbes with animals, and it could be with other things. So when the single population is there, like when you are growing the microorganisms in the laboratory, or it may be quite possible even in the fields also, but uh, the single population may be predominating, because the conditions be favorable for the single population growth, like paddy field is there. Paddy field, due to stagnant water, there is every possibility of growing Nasdaq. Nasdaq and these two algae will grow in the paddy fields. You must have seen the green blooms in the paddy fields. So one particular population is growing over there, but still there are other populations in it. Other bacteria are also there in that one. So generally, the pure culture bacteria which is grown in the laboratory can be considered as a single microbial population. Here, generally interactions are three types: neutral, negative, positive. Neutral, here what happened? Both the microbes are two different single species, two micro. When you talk about single microbial population, here it may not be negatively associated or positively associated. There is no advantage for both the things, or no disadvantage for both the things. That is called as negative interactions. And positive interactions, at least one should get benefited out of it. When two are coming in contact with one another, then one at least should get benefited. If it is possible, both, if it can be benefited, that is well and good. But minimum one should get benefited in case of positive interactions. Whereas in negative interactions, what happened? At least one should get disadvantage out of these interactions. There should be a loss for at least one population or one group of bacteria or one bacteria. That is called as negative interactions. So how this type of interactions are possible when the single population is there? See, it is only E. coli. It is only E. coli growing in a flask. Okay, only E. coli is growing over there. Then how it is possible? How it is negative? How it is positive? And how it is neutral? When you are growing, already you read growth curve experiment. When the microbial population is very less, see, that is when you inoculated your bacteria. When you inoculated the bacteria, 0th time, when you inoculated the bacteria into the, what happened? The microbial number is going to be very less, whereas nutrients are surplus. Nutrients are surplus, huge amount of nutrients are there in that one, whereas microorganisms are very less. And even the situations are favorable now. Everything like pH, temperature, and there is no waste accumulated over there. Everything is available over there. So what happens over there? The bacteria, see, it will grow by its own. It will feed its own feed, and it does not affect on the other bacteria. This is called as neutral relation. This is called as neutral relations. And see, there is a possibility of positive and negative interactions also. In positive interactions, see, we are taking peptone in the medium, in the fermentation, in the growth medium, we are taking peptone and yeast extract. Yeast extract obviously will be having monomers, small units are there. Whereas in case of peptone, it is a oligomer or polymer. So this peptone, the bacteria will consume, bacteria will release the proteolytic enzymes, proteases will be released, and it will be cleaved. it will be cleaved, so that monomers are released. What is the monomers here? The amino acids. These monomers are easily consumed by the other bacteria. Like all the bacteria will be digesting, and all the bacteria will be consuming not only its own digested material but other bacteria's digested material. So here there is a cumulative or positive association here. So what happens here in this type of, when the nutrients are very high, when the bacterial population is moderate or less, then the bacterial population will be increased, bacterial biomass will be increased. This is called as positive interaction. This is called as, even in the single population also, even in the single population, single microbial population, single E. coli is growing in the nutrient broth. In the nutrient broth flask, only the E. coli is growing. What happens when the nutrients are high? When the nutrients are high and the microbial population is less or moderate, this bacteria will release the proteolytic enzymes which will degrade the peptones or polymers to release into monomers, and this monomer really consumed by the bacteria, so that the bacteria will be growing and the growth curve will be enhanced. That is about positive relation. Negative relation, negative interaction. See, once the bacteria, like once the reaches at almost to the stationary phase, nutrients are going to be depleted, and the waste going to be accumulated over there, and the microbial population is already enriched. Microbial population has reached at a peak level, and at this stage, what happens here? There will be a competition. There will be a competition for the nutrient resources. There will be competition. So what happens here? The bacteria, as few bacteria will be taking the nutrients, and the nutrients are not available for the remaining bacteria. So once the nutrients are depleted, only a few bacteria, mostly the youngest bacteria, will be successfully competing for the nutrients, and whereas the elder bacteria, the grown bacteria, the increased size bacteria are not in access to the nutrients. So this leads to the lysis of the cells. This leads to the bacteria which are not having sufficient amount of nutrients for it will be अली भी क्लास में हूं मैं, बाद में बात करता हूं. So once this depletion is taking place, the population density decreases. In negative interaction, whenever the nutrients are less, or whenever the waste is accumulated, and what happened? Few bacteria will be like competing for the feed or nutrients, so that it will be growing more, and remaining bacteria will not be growing because the nutrients are not there for it. So in the single population, this is an example of microbial interactions in a single population. There are three types of interactions. There is a neutral, positive, and negative. In neutral, there is no like, see, when immediately when you have added the inoculum to the to the medium, there is no positive, no negative. There is no growth is not. So in such cases, there is a neutral interaction, and in the initial phase it is a positive, and the later phase it is a negative interactions. This is the basic thing. And now we'll discuss about the microbial interactions between the microbial populations. Different microorganisms are involved here. Okay, different types of microorganisms are involved here. So different types of interactions are involved. To summarize, you can see this table, and it is there in your textbook also. Neutralism. In neutralism, none of the organism either benefited or lost. Neither benefited nor lost. That is neutralism. And commensalism. commensalism, at least one bacteria should get benefited, and other should not get either benefit or loss. That is called as commensalism. We'll discuss in detail about these things. Synergism or protocooperism. Actually, synergism is not a permanent association, a temporary association. Whenever these two hosts come in contact, when these two populations come in contact, they will the benefit. They will enjoy the benefit. And whenever they goes away from one another, there is no benefit of sharing there. And mutualism, symbiosis, actually it is a very essential when they wants to actually what it happens like a separate species. You cannot differentiate these two. These two hosts cannot be differentiated. That is the beauty of symbiosis. See, the synergism can be easily separated, but mutualism cannot be easily separated. And competition, see, there is a competition of resources. So there is a loss here. Sometimes A population is losing, sometimes B population is losing. When the two are fighting, or when two equal animals are fighting, definitely sometimes A loses and sometimes B loses over there. Okay. And amensalism, here in amensalism, definitely there should be a loss for one population. Another population may lost, may be gained or may not be gained. And predation here, see, predation is basically like you are taking something away from it. So here one is benefited, another is lost. Parasitism is also almost same. The difference in between the parasitism and predation, parasitism, it will be sitting on the host and it will be enjoying on it. Whereas predation, it will be taking away the host from that area. That is predation. Okay, hope you understand, and I will do in detail, and if time permits, I'll come back and I will do in detail of this table. So neutralism. Neutralism, basically, there are so many microbial populations in the soil. You take different types of soils, garden soil or soil, or there's a humus soil. Different types of soils are there. So there are definitely actions are there, but even though there is a neutralism is also there in that one. The microbial population without interaction with one another, they don't do any like loss or benefit to the remaining host. See, sometimes what happened, there's a dead and decaying material is going to be there in the soil. So just these saprophytes will occupy that area. See, if suppose roots are died, or if the stem is died, then what happened, this microbial population will occupy there, and then it starts growing on it. As it is growing on the dead and decaying material, there is no damage to the roots or the stem of the plant, isn't it? That's what it is in neutralism. And the nutrients are, it is a fresh and dead material. Nutrients are hugely available over here. It could be a leaf or stem or roots or whatever the dead decaying material. The nutrients are available for the microbes, so happily they will grow, and they don't compete with other microbes, and they don't do any harm to the other microorganisms. So this is nutrient. Obviously, see, in a soil population, this is a one type of interactions. Okay, always the dead and decaying material not be available. Dead and decaying material may be available only certain time. It is not always. Remember this one. Okay. Now we'll see the positive interactions. Positive interactions in the sense at least one organism should get benefited out of it. Out of the relation, at least one should get benefited. And the best example, the first example is commensalism. here commensalism, the first example already we discussed in the table, and here the organism that gets benefited is called as commensal, and the organism which is unaffected called as host. Can you give me some examples of commensalism in as a human body as a host? As a human body host, we got several commensals in our body. Can you tell me those commensals? Which gets benefited out of our body. There are so many. See, diphtherides are there in our throat. Diphtherides are there in our throat. They are commensals. They are whatever the waste material is there after consumption of the food, some waste material that is remaining, that will be taken up by the diphtherides, and they will be growing. And generally, they are not harmful. But sometimes infects to it, Faj toxin gene is integrated into the diphtherides, and then they will become the toxic. Many such kind of, even E. coli is also commensal. E. coli is also commensal. It decomposes lactose in our stomach. In fact, in that way, that is useful to us. So commensalism is basically at least one organism or one population should get benefited, and the remaining population is unaffected. Unaffected in the sense it is neither benefited nor lost, and the gets benefited is called as commensal. There are so many organisms which are surviving on our body, which is called as normal flora. Which is called as normal flora. And these normal flora actually both they are having, like, see, we are getting protected from other organism infections, so we are benefited, and the commensals are getting the shelter over there and sometimes nutrition also, so the both are benefiting here. So normal flora does not come under the normal flora, which is there, that does not come under the commensal. And see, sometimes you must have heard about reservoirs. Sometimes the term reservoir we must have heard. What is this reservoir? Can somebody what is reservoir? In malaria, antelopes. What do you mean by carrier?
It carries a microorganisms, but the microorganism does not affect the animal. A carrier.
Yeah, pathogens actually they will be growing in that host, but they will not cause the disease to that host. Such kind of host is called as reservoir host or carrier host. There are many such kind of examples. For malaria, what is the reservoir or carrier? It is antelopes. So that is also one type of neutral interactions over there. Here, as it is a microbial interactions that we are studying, that we'll see some of the microbial interactions. And chlorella, you know, it is a single cell protein algae. It is a Chlorella pyrenoidosa. It produces growth promoting substances, and they helps the growth of Pseudomonas and Xanthomonas. So when generally this chlorella grows in aquatic system. It grows in the aquatic system. There is a ponds. So this Pseudomonas and Xanthomonas also, Xanthomonas and Pseudomonas also simultaneously grows in that area. But here these are we can call as they are this Xanthomonas that does not synthesize few type of growth promoting substances. What are the growth promoting substances? Can you mention? Like amino acids. Hormones are not much involved in case of bacteria, whereas in case of plants, phytohormones are involved. And even some bacteria do produce phytohormones. There's the E. coli. Our E. coli produce indole, which is a auxin. Okay, that we'll discuss later. First, we'll discuss about microorganisms. So the chlorella, the basic single cell protein producing bacteria, algae, green algae, it produces growth substances, the growth promoting substances, basically amino acids, vitamins. This amino acids and vitamins, chlorella is very rich in amino acids, this protein and this amino acids and vitamins and minerals. So few of these amino acids and minerals, they are released into the environment, and that will be taken up by these xanthomonas and pseudomonas, and they will be growing excellently. Otherwise, they will not be growing. These type of bacteria, see, like pseudomonas and xanthomonas, they are called as fastidious. They are called as fastidious. What do you mean by fastidious? They cannot synthesize all its essential requirements. They need to have some support from outside. Like best example is our lactobacillus also. Lactobacillus casei. It requires riboflavin, and so there is a riboflavin in milk, but in curd that is missing, because the lactobacillus casei, which is there in the milk, which is growing for the curdation process, that will be consuming the riboflavin. Okay, so that is about one commensalism example. Even curd also we can give the commensalism example. The other example is Flavobacterium brevis. See, it releases the growth factor. There is one of the amino acids, and that is taken up by the Legionella. And Legionella cannot synthesize its cysteine. It has to, E. coli is not a fastidious. It is called as auxotroph. It just you provide the basic thing, it can synthesize everything for its requirement. So these kind of bacteria are called as fastidious or auxotrophs. Okay, so this is the relation in between the microorganisms. And there is one example here, facultative anaerobes. So do you know what is the difference between facultative and obligate? Facultative is either way it will survive its life. Obligate, strictly it will survive in only one way. That is called as obligate. Facultative aerobes means if it is aerobic conditions or anaerobic conditions, it will survive. If it is an obligate aerobe, it should be a strict aerobic condition. If it is aerobic obligate anaerobe, if it is obligate, means if a little amount of oxygen is there, it will die. Okay, so here what happens here? Facultative anaerobic bacteria means the bacteria which will survive either in the presence and absence of oxygen. So it is capable of growing even in the presence of little oxygen. It will consume that oxygen, so that it will create the environment into anaerobic. And once the anaerobic environment is created, what happens here? Anaerobic bacteria, obligate anaerobic bacteria can happily grow in that area. It can survive. So the first bacteria, the facultative anaerobic bacteria, is creating the suitable environment for the growing of obligate anaerobic bacteria. So these two are this call here. Is it obligate anaerobe or facultative anaerobe? Which is commensal here? Somebody reply.
Obligate anaerobes.
Weird.
Obligate anaerobe, yeah, because it is the one which is enjoying the facility created over there. It is getting benefited. Otherwise, it would have died. Obligate anaerobe, if it does not have the anaerobic conditions over there, which is created by the facultative anaerobe, it would have died over there. Okay, so this is one example, and there are several examples in bacteria in sedimentations. See, in fact, we have this in practicals also. There is a methogenic bacteria. It requires anaerobic conditions. Strictly anaerobic conditions are there. See, methane gas, biogas production, what happens here? Different populations will be establishing. First, what happened? Hydrolytic bacteria will be coming. See, we are taking starch basically, or the cellulosis and starch will be taking as a feed. First, this cellulitic bacteria or amylolytic bacteria will be growing in that one. So that cellulose will be decomposed into glucose. Then this glucose will be converted into ethanol by the fermenting bacteria, ethanol fermenting bacteria. Then that glucose, the ethanol, whatever it is produced, that will be converted into acetic acid. Then acetic acid will be converted into methane. See, the sequential process is there. First, it will be hydrolytic process. Whatever the polymers are there, the cellulose polymer is decomposed into monomers, that is the glucose, and then that glucose is further fermented into ethanol, and then that ethanol is converted into vinegar, that is acetic acid, and that acetic acid is subsequently converted into methane. So acetyl group is removed from that, and from that acetyl group, see, the two methyl groups are converted. So in this context, see, methogenic process, there's a methyl production process is only the anaerobic process. Rest of the processes are aerobic process. But this aerobic process, what happens? As they are consuming the oxygen from there, from the whatever the gas plant that we are having, from that one, they will be consuming up the oxygen and they are creating the anaerobic conditions. If you take anatomy of biogas plant, methanogenic bacteria are located at very base, at very down position they are located. Whereas mostly the top position we will be having these cellulitic microorganisms. So this ecosystem, actually it becomes a one type of ecosystem there, biogas plant ecosystem. So ecosystem creates a relations, there is a commensal relation over there. And relation between the fungi and the bacteria. Fungi releases extracellular enzymes which will decompose the plant material. There is a is decomposed and the monomers are released, and that monomers are being consumed by various bacteria. And another bacteria, Baggiata. Do you know something about this Baggiata? Baggiata. Baggiata is a bacteria which will survive at very high temperature. It is hot springs, 3000 degrees Celsius. This bacteria will survive. It is sulfur oxidizing bacteria. It is a sulfur oxidizing bacteria. It detoxifies hydrogen sulfide by oxidizing. There's some bacteria. See, like anaerobic bacteria, terminal oxygen acceptor is H2S, whereas in case of aerobic bacteria, it is water, H2S. So this Baggiata will consume that H2S, and as it is consuming H2S toxicity to the aerobic organisms is, that's how one is benefiting other. There is a this Pseudomonas. Pseudomonas, you know, it is a very deleterious microorganism. It causes decomposition of almost all material which is there. Causes almost every material, but there are still some species which cannot consume everything. Arsenal is a very, even for human being, it is a poisonous. Arsenal is a very dangerous substance. So this Pseudomonas produces arsenal, which is consumed by the bacterium and Curobacterium. So there is an interaction in between these two. Okay, I think this is enough. So these are different types of commensalism relations. So at least I hope you to remember one or two. If you can remember two examples, so you can write in the exam, final exam. Synergism is it is also called as proto-cooperism. What is proto-cooperism? Cooperism is association, cooperation in between two. What is proto? That is the initial. It is not matured relation. It is the initial relation. Okay. Here, both the organisms are benefiting. Both the organisms are benefiting in synergism. But as I told you, it is not a obligatory. It is not a permanent relation. It is not a permanent. Whenever these two comes in contact, enjoys the benefit. But when they are separated, when they are away from one another, there is no advantage sharing in between these two. That is synergism. That is what it is called as proto-cooperation. Here, see, symbiosis. Synergism is different from the symbiosis. There are mutualism. So, synergism is a temporary association, we can call it. Or it is a non-obligatory. Obligatory is compulsory. It is a compulsory. Whereas it is compulsory or facultative, we can call it as a. This type of interaction generally results in a synthesis of product formation of destructive. We'll do. If you take the plant cell wall consists of different components. Like cellulose also contains there's a hemicellulose. These are the three major components in it. Cellulose is a polymer of glucose. Hemicellulose is a polymer of pentoses. Lignin is a polymer of phenolic compounds. Three are different components. So any one bacteria cannot decompose all three components. See, trichoderma is there. Trichoderma produces cellulases. So it will do the decomposition of only cellulose, not hemicellulose, not lignin. Whereas the fusarium bacteria, sorry, fungi, the fusarium fungi, it can do excellent decomposition of lignin. Whereas Candida species can do efficient decomposition of, there is a there is a pentose fraction. Okay, so here we got see one particular compound is, see, if lignin is removed from the plant cell wall, now the plant cell wall is easily accessible for the degradation of cellulose and hemicellulose. So one is facilitating the other. If the lignin is not removed from there, if the lignin fraction is not removed perfectly from there, then what happens here? The remaining two components, there's a, even though you are having a capacity to decompose those, you cannot do efficiently because the one fraction is not removed. Hope you got. I hope you understand for it. There is a mutual understanding is there, but here they are not permanent associated with one another. That cell wall decomposition is over from there, then what happens? Cellulose decomposing bacteria will go separate. There is a phenol decomposing bacteria will go separate, and this hemicellulosic decomposing bacteria will go separate. So this is not obligate or permanent association for them. Other here given here, there's a chemostat. I think in the last semester growth curve we studied. In the growth curve, turbidostat and chemostat, these are the two words we got. Chemostat is a one regulator. Actually, it is a regulator. Once it gets the optical density, but given optical density, what happens? See, we are growing the bacteria in a fermenter. We are growing the in a fermenter. So the certain OD has come. The microbial population has reached a certain population. Once it detects certain OD, chemical, otherwise chemical concentration, glucose concentration has depleted up to the certain extent. So this chemostat senses either OD or chemical concentrations. Then it gives a signal to the instrument so that either the glucose is enriched in that one, or the microbial population is removed from there. So that is called as chemostat. It maintains the constant concentration of glucose or microbial population by the chemostat. And turbidostat is another word which will maintain the turbidity of microbial. So here, if you there is a chemostat enriched culture of Pseudomonas sturzi, this population means the growth, the fermenter which is having excellent growth with balanced glucose in it. It can Parathion. What is Parathion? Do you know what is Parathion? Parathion is a pesticide which is generally we are using against different types of. This is for even for the leaves removal also we will be using Parathion, and it is dangerous in the field. So this Pseudomonas sturzi will be converting this Parathion into Parathion phenol. But it cannot utilize this parathionol as a carbon source. But another species, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, can utilize its phenol version of parathion. So if these two are there, what happens here? They can effectively consume the parathion, and they can convert the complete decomposition of parathion will be taking place, and it will be converting into that's a non-toxic carbon dioxide and releasing into the atmosphere. And the other example, E. coli and Enterobacter faecalis. E. coli and Enterococcus faecalis. And here they can convert arginine to putrescine. Putrescine, it will convert into arginine. Whatever the arginine is amino acid, and that will be converted into putrescine. And first, there is a Enterococcus faecalis can convert arginine to ornithine. Ornithine cycle you must have seen. Ornithine cycle that comes in liver. Okay, so arginine to ornithine, and subsequently E. coli further it converts ornithine into putrescine. And what is the use of this putrescine? It is a growth promoting substance. Okay, and so these are associated with like this. See, some cycles are there. You can see here. The compound A is digested by population 1. It is decomposed by population 1 to give a compound B. And this compound B, like we have seen earlier, Pseudomonas case. And this compound B, phenolic substances, are consumed by the population 2, second population. And now whatever the decomposed compounds are there, that will be consumed by both the compounds, and you will be getting the end product. And there is one more relation here. We can see this is in epiphytic bacteria. In epiphytic bacteria, what it will do? It will decompose the organic matter, and it will consume the oxygen to release the carbon dioxide and vitamins. And this carbon dioxide and vitamins are consumed by the algae in the presence of light, and it will producing again the organic compounds. So here there is an association in between both of these things. There is a synergism in between both of these organisms. There is a one more relationship you can see here. Nocardia species, they can Pseudomonas, whatever the end products of Nocardias are there, that will be consumed by the Pseudomonas, and it will release the growth promoting factors, and it consumes, it produces the cyclohexane, which will be consumed by the Nocardia. These are all there in your textbook. Spirulina produces H2S. Spirillum, not spirulina, sorry. Spirillum produces H2S and carbon dioxide, and that is being consumed by the chlorobium. And in the presence of light, carbon dioxide is consumed to give there's a formic acid and sulfur, and that both the substances are utilized by the spirillum. See, these examples gives an indication that both the organism, both the populations are getting benefited from one another. Okay, that is many. We can give many examples for synergism. But one important thing that you should remember, that synergism is a temporary association. It is not a permanent association. You must be having a doubt, sir, why you're not discussing about rhizobium. Okay, it is a temporary relation. Now we'll discuss about mutualism. What is mutualism? Here, both the organisms are getting benefited. Both the organisms are getting benefit, and they exchange the nutrients, and nutrients exchange is also taking place in that one. And if the nutrient exchange is taking place, the cynotrophism, it is called as cynotrophism. And here, basically, mutualism stands for whatever the benefit that you are getting with one another, that is possible when you are associated with one another. And this association is it is a not a facultative, it is a permanent association, or at least we can call it as a there is a obligate. It is a obligate relation is there here in this case, not a facultative. And the best example ever that we can study in this one is rhizobium, symbiotic bacteria. We studied, and in fact you will be studying several times about rhizobium. That's isolation of rhizobium bacteria, observation of root nodule formation, and even sometimes nitrogenase activity. Different levels we'll be discussing about this rhizobium bacteria. So we'll try to understand a bit more about this. We'll see later, but first we'll see the other examples. There are some endosymbionts. Endosymbionts in the sense they will survive within the cell. So in paramecium, you will come across several species. So within the cytoplasm of there is a paramecium, lot of chlorella. Chlorella is a very small species, so it will survive within the paramecium. Paramecium is a very big ciliate. So within that ciliate, you will be having the chlorella. So what is the job these organisms are doing? See, chlorella, some of the parameciums are green in color because there is a chlorella in it. Chlorella is a algae. It will do photosynthesis. It will do photosynthesis. So it will take the carbon dioxide from the paramecium, and it will do its photosynthesis, and it will release the oxygen. And that oxygen, and apart from that oxygen, it is also synthesizing the organic compounds. The glucose is the outcome of photosynthesis. So the glucose and oxygen is being available for paramecium, and simultaneously the protozoa, it provides the protection, motility, and carbon dioxide and growth factors also for the chlorella. So here both the things are associated with one another. These are some examples here. Legume plants and ulnus plants also. Here, in case of legume plants, it is a rhizobium. There are different types of species are there. Ulnus plants, have you seen this ulnus plant? Even casuarina, you must have seen the casuarina. Okay, whatever may be. So in case of rhizobium plants, root nodules are formed rhizobacterium, and in case of ulnus plants, it is a frankia, generally frankia, that makes root nodules. And basically the job is here fixation of nitrogen. And NPK, see, if you characterize the essentiality nutrients, nitrogen is a most essential element. So nitrogen is synthesized by this bacteria, and microbes, what they get here, they get support and growth factors and some nutrients also for its growth. And its importance is agriculture importance. See, rhizobium plants, the groundnut or there's any leguminaceous plants, if you are growing, the urea consumption, nitrogen consumption is going to be, there's a fertilizers consumption is going to be very less. Okay. And in remaining plants, see, this is the association there in case of your leguminaceous plants, whereas in remaining plants, the fungi is associated and it is called as rhizosphere. Here, what happened? Minerals are absorbed by this rhizoids or fungi, and that will be given to water is absorbed, minerals are absorbed, and that will be given to the roots. Root will give the shelter and some organic nutrients to it, and very much required for the agricultural plants for these kind of relations. Okay. Anyhow, you will see these relations. Okay. These examples are given. This mutualisms. We'll discuss some examples now. First example is lichens. What is the lichen? It is the association between a fungus and algae. We can call it as a obligatory association in between the fungus and algae. And this particular species of fungi and algae, and sometimes even cyanobacteria are also there. The association in between the obligatory association between the fungi and algae or sometimes cyanobacteria is obligatory, and see, they cannot grow individually if you try to grow. See, there are recently some techniques have been developed. Very few species of lichens could able to grow in the laboratory, but the majority of the lichens cannot grow in the laboratory conditions. Something is missing, the association factor, something is missing in the laboratory. So individual component to grow. See here, the fungi in lichen is called as mycobiont, and algae is called as phycobiont, and whatever the cyanobacteria component is called as cyanobiont. These components, if you want to grow in the laboratory conditions, it is not possible. They will be growing once the other partner is coming in contact. Otherwise, it is not growing. See, in these lichens, the majority of the portion is contributed by the fungi. That is called as thallus. There's a thallus contributes almost 90%. 85 to almost 90%, 90 to 95% is contributed by the fungi thallus, and remaining whatever the component that is by algae or cyanobacteria. It is by studied on a big thallus. This algae is studied here and there. It is not the entire thing. So what is the job here? What is the mycelium doing, and what fungal partner is doing, and what the algal partner is doing, and what is the importance of these lichens? Basically, the mycelium is a lot of degrading enzymes. It degrades a lot of degrading enzymes, hydrolytic enzymes we can call them. See on the rock, it is the lichens which establishes first. So it releases the enzymes which are responsible for decomposition of even rock, and whatever the nutrients that are getting, so it will be taken up by the what you call your saprophytic fungi. Simultaneously, the algae or cyanobacteria, which are they will do the photosynthesis and they will do the synthesis of organic material. So if there is no sunlight, this fungi will release saprophytic or hydrolytic enzymes, and it will do the decomposition of material. See, if it is on rock, maybe decomposition is very less, but if it is on the bark or on the leaves or something, definitely the good amount of decomposition is taking place. So when it is on the rack, the major role will be established by the algae. You must have studied about successions. In rock succession, or first the organisms which are going to be established on the rocks is going to be the lichens. First, they will do the decomposition of rocks. They will break the rocks into small pieces, and subsequently other bacteria will establish over there. And this is then we'll be getting from that rock, we'll be getting the normal soils. Okay, this is the succession part in what we come across in your ecology, environmental science. So there are almost 20,000 of lichen fungi have been described, and this is almost 25 fungi of all known fungi. 25% of the fungi are involved in the lichen formation. And almost 30 genera of cyanobacteria are involved in this process. As I told you, they cannot be grown individually in the laboratory conditions, but we can grow them if they are there in the group. So they are the first organisms to establish on the stones. So they are called as pioneering organisms. They are called as pioneering organisms, and these organisms are very sensitive to sulfur dioxide. And lichens are very sensitive to the sulfur dioxide. So we consider lichens as a indicator organisms for this sulfur dioxide pollution. Just adjacent to the oceans, because nowadays huge amount of industrial pollutions, sulfur will be there in the industrial pollutions. If because of that pollutions are enriched in that area, that river banks or ocean and there's banks, they are losing lichen populations. So this is the one. If you come across there's a dying or dead lichens in a particular area, that it gives an indication that there is a sulfur dioxide pollutions in that area. And lichens are they are good food dyes. Basically, they are color giving substances, and litmus is also being extracted from a lichen. Then mycorrhiza. The other example is mycorrhiza. Many almost to pick the plant with the roots. Like you do come across a lot of fungi over there. At least it may not be the tender roots, but the old leaves, old roots. Almost all are associated with the fungi, and they are called as mycorrhiza. The roots which are associated with the fungi, they are called as mycorrhiza. Here, basically, different types of mycorrhizas are there. Frank has classified this mycorrhiza into, I think, 7 types. Yeah. Basically, the job of mycorrhiza is absorbing the water and nutrients from the soil, because see, a root is limited to certain area, whereas the fungi, because this will be growing profusely into the soil, it is having a lot of access of soil, so it will be easily growing there, and it will be easily collecting the water. It will be absorbing soil, water, as well as minerals, and it will be providing to its host. And simultaneously, the host will be providing a shelter, and it will be providing the nutrients, some nutrients and growth factors to it. So both will be benefited in this case. And there are different examples are there here. We can see those things. So the first one is vascular arbuscular mycorrhiza, VAM. This we'll be doing in the lab also. We'll be isolating the VAM. So here, this is ecto as well as endo. It is associated inside as well as outside. Almost all, but graminea plants are having this VAM association. Graminea plants like your paddy, maize, all these plants are having good VAM association. And they are coiled inside. This hyphae is coiled inside, and some places it will be making vesicles and arbuscules. At some places it will be making the vesicles and arbuscules. What is this vesicles and arbuscules? So vesicles, as the term indicates, some of the hyphae are accumulated at one point, and they makes a ball-like structure. Arbosicules, arbosicule is a hyphal structure. It is just below the epidermis, and it gives a connectivity in between the there's outside hyphae and inside hyphae. And VAM, even commercially it is being produced. There's a vascular and arbuscular mycorrhizas are commercially being produced and being sold to the agriculture farmers. And it is experimentally it is proved. Even earlier we were having this VAM plants. There's a maize plants in our field just before the department. In our in front of department fields, we have grown this VAM. Okay, so now that is about VAM. Here both are benefited. Here fungi, what it is doing, it is collecting the nutrients and water from the soil and giving it to the plants, and simultaneously it is helping in some metabolism of some waste materials, decomposing of waste material kind of things, and plant is providing the host shelter as well as some growth factors and nutrients to it, and it is a obligatory relation. Ectomycorrhiza, here you must have studied about Pinus or Cycas in your intermediate. There, see, in this Pinus and there is a ectomycorrhiza as well as endomycorrhiza. Ectomycorrhiza, this fungi is located only on the outside, whereas ectoendomycorrhiza, the mycorrhiza is present outside as well as inside. It is a outside as well as inside, and in both the cases it is a mycorrhiza. Because it is a mycorrhiza, it is sharing the nutrient sharing is there in between this. And arbitride mycorrhiza, very restricted to ericales. There's a ericales are the one type of plants, sheath kind of things will be coming in this one. And monotropid mycorrhiza and monotropicaceae, in this particular these are the mycorrhizas which are restricted to that particular organism only. Archid mycorrhiza, they are located to only archid plants. Archid plants. And the third of mutualism is bioluminescence. What is the bioluminescence? What is luminescence? If you are taking the light of invisible range and you are converting into visible range, that is called as luminescence. Here bioluminescence, here some bacteria, even some insects are all there in that case. Here some bacteria are associated with animals. There is marine animals. Here this with the enzyme, luminescence enzyme. See, luminescence enzyme is there in some insects as well as some bacteria. So this luminescence enzyme, in the presence of FMNH2, there is a it will in the presence of oxygen again, it will be converted into FMN, and it will be releasing that energy, and that energy will be that light, some color, green color, red color kind of thing, light is created, and this light is useful as a indication for searching for the food for the animal in the forest. Otherwise, it is for the sexual matings also. And the other example is rumens. Rumen microbes are herbivorous microorganisms. Herbivorous and microbial interactions. Here, like herbivorous animals, like the animals which consumes the grass, herbs, like cattle, sheep, goats, camels. They are known as well as they are known as ruminants, because there is a stomach is divided into 4 components in their these animals. Even in our body, cellulose is not decomposed. Cellulose, whatever we are consuming, sometimes this cellulose enters into appendix, and there the bacteria, if they are growing, that creates a nuisance. appendicitis is created because the cellulose fraction, if it enters into the appendix region, there are some bacteria. Like see, human body is not consuming any like cellulose. We are not having any cellulose producing enzymes, but in our body we got some enzyme, some bacteria which can decompose this cellulose. So these bacteria, if they enters into this appendix, like when you are eating batanis or something, there will be in the shell there will be a cellulose, huge amount of cellulose. All plant cell walls are having the cellulose. If it enters into the appendix and this bacteria enters into it, then they decomposes over there, and if that infection increases, then that will lead into appendicitis. Okay, so whereas in ruminants, just you see the stomach structure. This is the stomach structure of ruminants. It is having 4 chambers. The ruminant stomach is having 4 chambers. I'll enhance it. I'll show you. Yeah. So it is divided into 4 parts: rumen, reticulum, omasum, and obomasum. These are the 4 chambers. And see, the cellulose decomposition is taking place. Cellulose decomposing by microorganisms are there in the rumen. Here, the beauty of ruminants is they are called as grazing organisms. And they are, because they are grazing on the grass. Second, they are called as grasping organisms. They are called as grasping. See, once they are sitting at one place, once they comes back from the fields, once they are sitting over there, they will take out the nutrient, the partially digested food, and they will do again chewing. So this reticulum, obomasum, and they are the preserving bodies. They are the food preserving stuff. Will be taking out the food again back, and they will be giving it for the chewing purpose. That is the beauty of this ruminants. So here, as I told you, none of the living organisms, the animals, they got a capacity to digest the cellulose. And here in this case, what we have, cellulose is the only option, because the animals are feeding the plant and there's grass, only cellulose. And see, grains, very little amount of grains, the starch may be coming as a food. So we need to take only the cellulose. So the cellulose is digested by the bacteria, the ruminant bacteria, bacteria, and this cellulose. There are some other bacteria, whatever the different bacteria here, bacteroids are there, butyroids are there, and ruminococcus is there, and these bacteria will be producing different substances. Acetic acid is produced, butyric acid is produced, different substances are produced, and these substances are consumed by the ruminant cattle. This is about ruminants. Mutualism in and coral microbial association. This is see, coral reefs, you must have heard. Coral reefs, actually, if you just to give the importance, in an ocean the productivity is 50 grams per centimeter per year, whereas in the coral reef regions it is 2500 grams per cubic centimeter area per year. That is the importance of this area. The productivity is going to be very high. That is about positive associations. Now, antagonism. What is antagonism? The inhibitory effect of an organism over on other organisms. If one organism is inhibiting the other, that is called as antagonism. Here, that is negative association, we can call it as a. This is called as negative association. So it could be amensalism. So definitely one is lost. One could be neither benefited or lost, or benefited. Competition, both will be lost. Parasitism, one is benefited, one is lost. Predation, one is benefited, one is lost. So this negative interactions we'll try to do in the next class. I'll be happy to address if you have, because we have almost 12 minutes. It may not be possible to cover this entire thing. This I will do in the next session. I'll try to clear the queries if you have any doubts on the topic so far we have covered, or any other topics. Any doubts if you have, I will be happy to address. Musa, respond. What happened, Musa? Why did you join so late?
Sorry, sir.
Are you able to understand something? Musa, are you able to understand something?
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by interactions? Musa, make your mic mute. Yeah. See, even I have make a PowerPoint presentation. I will supply the PowerPoint presentation in the next class. See, all of you are having the books available. So if I am explaining something with the PowerPoint presentation and something is available in your books, you are facing the problem. So I am also like even soft material, soft copy of the books somebody need, let me know. I will provide this soft copy of books also for you. Just go through once my class. See, this is from the 4th unit. It is a few, I'll see. Page number 156. Today we discussed page number 156 to page number 166. 156 to 166 we discussed today. So just immediately, just go, Musa, you are having a book. So immediately go through, so it will become easy for you to understand. And if you are not able to understand, post it in the group or post it to me personally. I will try to answer whatever your queries are there. If you are just ignoring just like that, it will be difficult for you to understand. See, for our Indian people, see, interactions they are studying since probably 6th class onwards. Microbial symbiosis and synergism, all these topics are not new for Indian people. But Hafsha and Musa, that maybe some of our people also, it is difficult. So kindly see, passing is not a difficult. I never teach my students to pass. Always we try to make the students self-reliant. Hafsha, are you there?
Yes, sir.
What happened? Why did you join so late?
No, I was cooking the breakfast.
That can be done even after the class also. Or you have to wake up immediately after Fajr, you are supposed to do that. No? Ma, for you, anything that what we teach here is a new. Kindly try to attend the classes from the beginning itself. So if you see, I will give some introduction. I will try to track you in the main line. And 2 foreigners are there, and both of you are absent in the beginning. I'll try to bring introduce the topic with your experiences. So it is better always if you are there in the beginning. And see, for all of you, when I am presenting with PowerPoint or some other material, so it will become difficult for me when each and every student, see, you people are joining till 20 minutes. When some time is given, when 8:30 I have mentioned, I joined the group 10 minutes before 8:30. At least 10 minutes from the starting of the meeting, you should join the meeting, so that the class will not be disturbed by the other people. I will see at whatever the time that you are joining, I will coming to the class, I will join you, because whatever the session that is going on, you should be benefited out of it. But see, just a point of it, here onwards, please join at the earliest. I'll be happy if you just 12:30. If it is some time is given, fixed time, if you are joining, I'll be very happy. But at least if you can join within 5 to 10 minutes of session starting, if you can join, I'll be happy. And we have to complete the syllabus at the earliest now. So we'll be taking the classes, even additional classes if it is required, we'll take now. And we are planning some virtual laboratory classes also. Whatever the practicals are there for the second sem. Anyhow, you people will be there for another 2.5 years with us. So for you, it will not be a problem. But for final years, we are planning virtual labs. So if time permits, we'll do for you also. That's not a problem. So be interactive with the teachers, and be interactive with your friends also. If somebody is not getting something, Mosa or Hafsha or anybody in that regard, if you are not able to understand something, you can take help of your friends, colleagues. And as I told you, always I am at your risk. Always I am available. Just contact by WhatsApp or whatever, by phone or something. Immediately I am available. And probably see, every Monday it is a mandatory. We are coming to the department. Every Monday we will be coming compulsory. So somebody wants to come and discuss something with us, Monday you can come. And probably from Wednesday from tomorrow onwards, I think lockdown is further relaxed. So maybe we may be coming alternative days also. So like whenever you feel something to be discussed with the teachers, you can come down and you can have you can get your doubts clarified. So the assignment topics, like are you assigned, like are you got the assignment topics for second semester? Oh,
No,
sir.
okay. I'll talk to the teachers. Actually, this corona affected all the 3 teachers' families. In fact, okay. Anyhow, the situations comes and goes. We should not be stick to the situation worst conditions. We should overcome from the situation, and we should lead the path. Okay. Anyhow, very soon, probably by this weekend or next Tuesday on. Till next Tuesday, definitely we'll be giving the titles to you. That's the seminar topics. Actually, what a practice we have is the same topic, whatever it is given in the first semester. The theory concept was collected in the first semester, and the second semester you are supposed to collect the experimental component of the topic is given, which is given in the first semester. Suppose somebody is talking about just I don't remember. Deepak, what is your topic in first semester?
SIRNA, sir.
Huh?
SIRNA.
Okay, SIRNA. So in the first semester, you are supposed to collect the literature review. What is SIRNA? How it works, and who are the people worked on it? And that is a review part kind of thing that you are supposed to collect. Complete knowledge you are supposed to get in case of first semester. In the second semester, you are supposed to collect the information, how it has been used in the experiments. 1 or 2 experiments. 1 experiment is quite enough. If you can do 2 experiments, also good. By using the siRNA, how the genes have been silenced, how the outcome has been achieved. That's somebody else experiment you are supposed to collect, and you are supposed to represent in you are supposed to understand it in a better way, and you write it in your way, and you are supposed to make a presentation. And need not to wait. All of you, whatever the topic is there, that the topic's experimental part, experimental paper you are supposed to collect, and that paper should be, you write that paper again in your own way, that you will be understanding. There will be abstract, there is a introduction component, and there will be a material methods and results, discussion, conclusion. These are the headings will be there. Just follow it, but you write in your own language. So you will be able to understand what is the research, how the people will do the research, and in a given area only. Already Deepak knows what is SARNA now by this time.
Yes, sir.
So when you are studying the paper, one research paper, when somebody did the work on the siRNA, like how the work should be started, it will be there in the introduction, and how the material should be collected, and how to perform the experiments, how to collect the results, everything will be there. So today itself I am assigning the topics to you, same topics with experimental part. The research work you are supposed to present. See here, collection is not a big task here. You will be getting so many research papers, and I hope you got the mentors. You got the mentors, okay? And you just consult your research paper with your mentor, maybe because you are too young to decide whether your research paper is good or bad. So you consult your mentor, and you talk to them, and you discuss with them, and you find out whether your topic is good or bad. If your mentor accepts the topic, then you can go ahead. Okay, we'll be giving some time. You like 1 or 2 days you take time. My whomever I am mentoring, will meet some time. Shall we meet on Sunday? I'll give a link like this Google Meet link only I will send. Like total out of 30, I'm having 10 mentees. 10 will be under Anju madam, and 10 will be under Hanumalal sir. So I'll be actually every week at least once we are supposed to meet, and we should discuss everything. Whatever the things are going on in your academics and research and in your personal life, everything we should discuss. So I will schedule a meeting. I'll talk to the other people also, other teachers also, Hanumalal and Anju madam also, and we'll schedule 10 members. That is, if I am taking at least 10 minutes for each member, it will be 1.5 hours. It will be over. We'll do sometime, probably Sunday or sometime we'll plan, or Monday or something we'll plan this. By the time, whatever your topic is there, whatever the topic that you worked in first semester, relevant research papers, 1 or 2 you collect and keep with you. siRNA, somebody who worked with siRNA for silencing of genes, some curing of some disease, some research paper. If somebody like Musa or Hafsha, Musa, I don't know whether he has submitted. Musa, have you submitted first semester assignment?
No, sir.
No. So who is your mentor? You know? Gautam. Gautam,
Yes, sir.
CR.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Do you have the list of mentors, mentees?
No, sir. Previously, you have kept it in our group, sir. I think so.
That is the same thing. That is the same thing will be maintained for 3 years.
Okay, sir.
Just inform who is the mentor for this Musa, because he came late.
Okay, sir.
He came very late. So just let me know who is the mentor, so that we can assign some activity to him. Otherwise, we can.
Sir, Musa was not there in that list.
By that time, he didn't join, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Musa, like I'll assign you now itself, so that first at least you try to read about it and write something. Bioethanol, biofuels, bioethanol as a fuel, ethanol as a biofuel. This is your assignment. Just make a note. Ethanol as a biofuel. ethanol as a biofuel. Just first you are supposed to make a first submit the assignment for first semester. Then the same thing, like even I'm having several publications on ethanol production and bioethanol production. So you can take one of my paper and you can present for the second semester. So it will be easy for you. So how the bioethanol is produced by microorganisms, how the ethanol is produced by the microbial fermentation, that you are supposed to do for the second semester. In the first semester, you are supposed to just collect the ethanol, what is ethanol, how it is advantageous over the petrol, and all. There is a government of India has mandated to produce mix 20% ethanol in petrol. I think Hafsha, you got the topic. Hafsha,
Yes, sir.
you are having the assignment topic, na?
Mine? You mean mine?
Topic. What is the assignment that you have submitted in the first semester?
HIV virus. HIV virus.
Oxyvirus.
Yes, sir.
What is it? Okay. Anyhow, no, the research paper you are supposed to submit within the same line now in the second semester. Okay. So now, do you have the chemistry class now from 10 onwards?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I will take a leave now.